one to you, and there's a lot of questions themed around this area around getting manager commitment. So what is best practice or tips to obtain senior management commitment? Because we've had lots of questions around how can we encourage action from our higher ups when approval is needed, and also overcoming certain barriers. So if an organization has more of a commercial culture perhaps than a people culture, how do we address some of those concerns and make it more a priority for businesses to take on?
Okay. Yeah, it's the one that Zoe and I get quite a lot, isn't it? So the stock answer would be, okay, you have the moral case, the legal and financial case. That seems to be the typical one. And you could say to any organization, well, actually you have a legal responsibility to actually manage stress, and you also have a legal responsibility not to cause accidents and make people end up going home in a worse state than have already. But we know that doesn't work. So I've just been exploring some other research more lately, looking at how you maybe come at it from a sideways view. If you've got sort of senior leader who's like really stuck in the old way of doing things, maybe just don't like to be told, there's a different or better way of doing things. What you start to think about is, who are the other go-to people in that business? Who are the people that they talk to, that they feel confident in listening to? It might be, sales director. It might be someone that's totally left field, who has got nothing to do with safety, climate, nothing to do with managing stress in the business, but it's their go-to person. But that person may be more receptive. So that's one of the ways that you can actually do it. It's almost like sort of doing almost like a stakeholder, a network sort of map in your head or down the piece of paper and thinking, who talks to who? The other way is thinking about actually what motivates people. So particularly if you've got a very highly target-driven organization, very commercially, then you are going to focus on, okay, what's this mean for our business? If you're commercially driven, the quality of what you do is really important. You will not get that quality if everyone's going off sick. Maybe they're not sleeping well because they're under a huge amount of pressure. Those demands are not measured. And it's the same applies for the safety climate. You look at what is the driver for that business. If they're a family organization, then, it's easy, isn't it? Because everyone knows what everyone else, and say, actually, we don't want to hurt people. We want to encourage whether we keep these people. If you've got another sort of business, particularly where there's a heavy reliance on people's skills and competency, particularly in what we call science, technology, engineering, huge amount of competition, particularly we know in renewables, oil and gas. You want to keep those people in that job. You don't want them going off to your competition. So those are things you think about: what's driving the business and who are the key stakeholders.
Brilliant, thank you, Jen. And just open that up, Zoe, Ian, or any other comments on how to go about overcoming this? Because we've had lots of questions I've just seen come in the Q&A as well, and I get this. I suppose when organizations have been established for a good number of years and there's that level of culture, I suppose you put it down quite traditional rather than a little more agile. How do you, are there any tips about how you may approach that compared with anything that Jen's just said?
I think Jen's given a really good comprehensive answer to that, especially the point around making sure that you pick the right person to speak to the senior leaders, to get them involved, and making sure that you have that good stakeholder group for those communications. But I suppose it's also about when you've got organisations that are maybe a little bit more stubborn, that have been a certain way for so long, to make sure that you are presenting some facts to them to say, this has happened, these are the results of what's happened, and that's why we need to intervene. So giving that evidence-based approach as well can sometimes be what they need, that sets them moving forward to say, this has already happened now. Do we want to stop this happening again in future? And this is what the consequence of that happening has been, and really get people involved in that. I mean, when you're looking at the moral case for these things, for example, it can be really powerful to get people that have been, when they feel comfortable to do so, that have been impacted by health and safety incidents in the workplace, to come into workplaces and speak about how it's impacted their lives and the difficulties they've then faced, and then what they would recommend in kind of what could have been done to possibly prevent that, because that really makes you see it as a real person and not just stats on a page as well. So there's lots of different angles you can come at to really try and make it so that it is real life and not just, oh, it's health and safety gone mad, which is what a lot of places think, but it is actually real people and real people's lives.
Yeah, and just to add to that, that's excellent, Zoe. It is just around, for me, I've managed to help some organizations around the financials of understanding, but understanding what the actual cost is at the moment. So you think someone's off work for a week, so it's just we've lost that week's productivity, but it is much more than that. So I think last year's HSE's statistics, so the average cost of case of ill health was £19,300. The average cost of a non-fatal injury was £12,200. But on top of that, as Jen mentioned, with losing people from the industry, there's some independent research which states for the average £35,000 salary, the cost to an organisation of replacing them if they're leaving due to the culture of the organisation or excessive sort of or stress, excessive demands have been placed on them, is around about £30,000. It takes on average 9 months until somebody reaches 100% productivity. So, and you've got all of that recruitment time, the management time, sorting out temporary staff on top of it. And then when we're talking around health related productivity losses, there's some estimates, depends on which source you look at, which says that around about 10.9% of working time is lost. So that's around 6 hours per week for each full-time employee, or about 35 working days per year for a full-time employee, due to work-related ill health. So presenteeism is the act of being at work but not being productive. So if you're stressed, if you've got a bad back, many of those things sort of tie into that. So it's just looking at what the costs are of doing nothing, or the current state of showing actually not only is this legally the right thing to do, not only is it morally, it could actually have a financial benefit to the organization for increased productivity and reducing the lost costs.
Yeah, brilliant point. I think the sentiment there is look at your statistics, get an understanding of what's going on in the business, and like you say, then you can attribute it potentially financial losses as well.